about masculine and feminine, you say that probably have a lot more feminine past lives.
Yes, so I've been told.
And it's an interesting balance then, because when we look at this experience or this incarnation for you to bring the feminine into the masculine space.
Yeah.
Like that's what the value is.
In
the sense. It's also, I think, there's as we're all finding our voice, because here we are having a voice, so we're sharing a voice as well. It's recording. How we how each one of us expresses through the masculine, how the feminine holds the masculine to that express, because we're all we've got some really nice balancing in between the two. Because there's a lot of support within this group.
Oh,
so there's the feminine.
I love it. It's incredible. The amount of times I can get to describe it to people now. And I had this lady yesterday, and I was trying to explain it to her, and I never thought of the situation that came up where it was, oh yeah, but surely then, someone has another opinion and idea, and then how do you not, has there never been a fight or this has occurred and you get angry? And I went, it's never dawned on me that would be a thing here. There's no anger. She's like, surely, and there must be, you guys get. I went, I've never even thought of that. That's incredible. No, it's not even
it doesn't even register.
It's not even registered. And she's like, how can that be? You're a man. And I went, because this is the space. This is what we're doing. I know you don't understand. I have to see this.
Anyway. Which is a really good segue into the introduction.
So, welcome everybody. Today we're talking about the Divine Feminine and how that is informed in life and also through us as men and how that plays out in our lives as well. And also the balance between that of the feminine and the masculine in us, how that comes into fruition and how that kind of plays out in our life as well. So, obviously, let's even go deep on this straight away. So, I was thinking of this on the drive over here. So, obviously, we live in this world at the moment of polarity, in this universe of polarity. And the masculine and the feminine is the love and light concept in that. So, the love is the feminine, the light is the masculine. And as I was driving over, I was thinking, well, actually, that's only expressed in our universe, in this dimensional reality. Imagine what the other polarities, how they would be expressed in different universes.
You don't think they're running the same experiment somewhere else?
Well, they could be, but they could be running different ones as well.
Completely incomprehensible.
Well, you could talk about it from this universe, not necessarily. So, this universe, and we're looking at the law of one, up to third density is where you then make the choice of service to self or service to others. That's where the polarity in essence exists. Then after that, then moving into service to
positive and negative, or love or light.
Yeah, but I guess in a sense, it's still love and light, isn't it?
It's still
through this universe. We look at this solar system as being a particular logos having its own experiment. So we have our own archetypes, and our experiment is through the archetypal mind. So love and light, masculine and feminine. Beyond this solar system, beyond this logos, is it the same? That's probably the question.
Yeah, it's the same.
Well,
I couldn't answer.
if you then look at, say, the Orion group, if you look at your law of one, which is very much service to self, there's still going to be love and light that sits within that, I would imagine.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Okay. I do feel that service self, serve to others is separate to the love and light. Love and light is like the concept in which this dimensional reality exists upon.
Yes.
And is the architecture of what you're going to experience.
Sure.
Then the choice of going down the direction of service to others, service to self, is then just a way of experiencing this reality through self.
through the polarity.
Through the polarity of self.
And I guess too, I think I spoke about this the other night, that when we look at, everything is held by the womb of creation, so everything is actually feminine. And so even if we look at ourselves, and feminine is in essence held by space. So the space is the unseen, the seen is the manifest, which is the light. So and light comes through density, so depending on the level of density is how much light can be seen through it, or how dense it is. So when we look at a planet, when we look at the celestial orbits, all of the stuff that we see in the universe could be the reflection of the masculine. So it's the masculine, it's the manifest. Not that it's man or woman, we're talking about masculine and feminine energies. And so when we look out into the night sky, all of the black stuff that we see can be represented by feminine, and all of the celestial bodies are an actual representation of the masculine because of the density of it.
Yeah, we refer to it as Mother Earth as a feminine.
Yes.
Via the sky.
Yeah, but they're only really, in a sense, just archetypes for the mind to understand. So we look at the earth as being the nurturing.
Yeah, which is the feminine.
Which is the feminine, And then really we could look at the sun being the nurturer, because without the sun, nothing on the earth will actually...
It's the light.
Yeah. So
That's
everything
the light,
comes
isn't
from
it?
the light, yeah. But see, the light is an expression of the love.
Yeah.
So ultimately everything came from love,
Yep.
and the way that it's expressed into a physicality is through light.
So therefore, in every dimension, there is the aspect of love, because everything is love.
Everything comes from love, so which is, in a sense, the feminine.
Yep.
Because it's the womb, and we spoke about this the other day, that we're all born from the womb. We're not born from a man. So if we're born from the womb, we're all coming from the feminine. The universe is the feminine. It was born from love. So,
to answer your question in another way, this is just a little bit of a side shoot, but in some other logos,
please.
we, male, female here, but imagine for a second that we want to make it harder for ourselves again, so we go 4 energies of complexity, and you have to combine
to get together
the 3 and 4, something like that, because that's harder again. I don't know, maybe, but another time. But who knows?
Who knows?
I don't know.
Yeah, who knows? There's a really good...
Of course you're taking it.
It's usually you who goes there. Been hanging out with you too much.
Pointing the finger.
I'm hanging out with you too much.
Back at you.
Yeah. I'm good with that. I'll own it. Have you seen that documentary that goes through that and they conceptualise all the different species and animals that could happen out there? And it's a really good documentary.
No.
If someone's done it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll find it for you.
Yeah, cool.
And everything's carbon based.
Oh, that's Alien Worlds.
Yes.
Yeah, that's really good.
It is.
Yeah.
It is based on what we see in our world. What could and how the different lights at different planets create different coloured plants because of the density of the top of light.
Yeah, it's on Netflix.
It's really interesting.
There's another one on Gaia called Initiation.
Yeah, I think I've seen that.
Yeah, it's got some like Spanish type dude talking about it, but he talks about, like 1 up to the 10th dimension. It's really, you've got to be present with it, because it just, the concept.
Give you a headache.
Yeah, because he's saying that he came
Rewatch
from another planet where he can have access to the Akashic records, and he's just pulling all of this information out and you go, holy crap, but you're seeing all the sacred geometry. That's cool. Bring it back to, sacred geometry man here, but bring it back to, because...
So the question then is, this is a concept we've been talking about lately as a group, off camera, but let's bring it on camera. So in the concept of the feminine holding the masculine, in that space then of the cognitive mind being the masculine, being able then to explore through being held by the feminine, to explore deeper aspects of self.
Yeah, I don't even know if I'd say the cognitive mind is the masculine, because I think that you're in essence saying that consciousness is feminine and the mind is masculine. I'm still trying to come to terms with that, because it sort of suggests that this experience through the archetypal mind is a masculine experience. Whereas, can we flip that back to there's a part of consciousness. So a way that we can explain consciousness is infinite intelligence. So infinite can sort of suggest that it's love. Intelligence sort of suggests that there's wisdom. And it's the balancing of the love and the wisdom. If we look at law of one stuff, where we're going through fifth and sixth density, and the sixth density is the balancing of the love and the wisdom. The fifth density is where you're pretty much hanging out by yourself for most of your incarnation, so you can then learn wisdom. The sixth density is then to come into balancing the wisdom and the love, to then become higher self, to then come back and balance and rebalance all of the lifetimes that you've then had with love and wisdom. So I'm not too sure if the wisdom part is the mind.
I'm really liking the word truth now instead of wisdom, because that's, that stuff with Hawkins was talking about truth, because the infinite intelligence knows the truth.
Yes.
Wisdom is the application of knowledge.
It is the application.
Truth is
of
the
knowledge.
absolute knowing. So it's the knowingness.
So is it one step further or one step back or whatever it is? But is truth masculine or feminine, or is it just consciousness? Do you have consciousness, then you have masculine and feminine? So maybe
I think that's the combination of the two ultimately in the end. That's what I think. You'll get to that when you get non-dualistic and you become one, is when you've got the truth. When you put two parts together, you got the whole.
Right.
So how does that play out in the
Big fella upstairs, mate.
or the big lady upstairs.
Or the big lady, yes.
Or the not so big lady.
The non-gender, the four different genders from the planet Pluto,
Logos, Xeon.
planet Waters. How does that play out? I think that's part of this journey. It's working. I think that's part of this working this out.
I guess you're inviting each energy. You probably in this form potentially stronger in one energy format, and then you realize, oh, I'm trying to invite this other energy to a whole.
Yeah, I guess you alluded to before when we were talking about past lives. For me, that sometimes we've been female, or more often we've been female. Maybe that's the dance we play through the reincarnation of getting the experience of both, and slowly building both up within us.
I don't feel like you're being more female. I think you're just recognizing more of those right now.
I'm not. No, I'm just going for what people told me.
Maybe they're just recognizing them more inside.
Yeah. Potentially.
Yeah, and maybe even if you start to look at that from the conglomerate of all of your lives, both past and future, the feminine part of all of those is the one standing to attention, the one that's being activated
In this time right
now that you're consciously aware of.
Yeah. Because people have said that to me before.
Yep.
But I know, so I was thinking that before, and I was like, now it's like, well, no, there's definitely balance in that.
Yep.
But right now, it's like, there's that feminine aspect of yourself through these past lives or future lives that's being expressed more so now to bring balance in this place you're in right now.
Cool. I dig it.
And it's growing your hair, taking the hormones.
That's because I want to be like you.
Where did the hormones come in?
Gender
There's a whole joke there, but I'm not going there because I get in trouble for what I say on camera.
Yeah, I've got that.
So
There's nothing wrong with that bit.
I'm still uncertain as what is the masculine, what is the feminine. And really, we can sort of speak from a metaphorical perspective. And see I was listening to some Vedanta stuff, and the Upanishads used to use a lot of metaphor, because metaphor can only explain, can get close to the truth. Beyond a metaphor, then it becomes the truth. So the metaphors give you a guidance of where things are at. It's not the ultimate. So when you're explaining these concepts, metaphorically you can speak about them to give you a ballpark figure, a place to look, in a sense, a place to search, a place to remember. But when you find that ultimate truth, it doesn't become a metaphor, it is the truth.
Yeah.
Are we coming at this from a masculine way of trying to understand?
Well,
we just go, it is.
Yeah. So if we are coming from a masculine,
Podcast over.
then what is it? Well, where are we coming from?
Yeah, exactly.
Are we coming from the mind?
Well, yes, we are.
If masculine, if we, and we were talking about this before, if masculine comes about the logical, trying to, maybe logical is not the right word, but this way of explaining how this exists,
That
and that's
parts
the masculine.
approach.
Yeah, that parts approach. And you go through these steps and these steps and steps to get to there. Whereas, like we're talking about shadow works, just love it, which is the feminine.
Yeah.
Good question.
So maybe and we could come back to what you were saying, that maybe potentially if we're saying that we're coming from the womb of creation, and maybe consciousness is divine feminine, maybe the archetypal mind is the potential of masculine, because we can't call the archetypal mind divine masculine because it's only a vehicle within this density of experience.
Yes.
Yeah. So once we move out of this density, then do we lose all masculinity? I don't think so. I think that maybe you do, because maybe it's only in this density where the polarity of male and female. But when you look at also the law of one, there's with Ra, he was fifth density, or sixth density. Sixth density. He still was saying, they were
still learning.
They were still learning, but they were saying that that the way that you co-created or procreated was with another. So there's still loving union. There was still a male and a female as such, because still the children were still needing to be born through that process that we experience at the moment.
My understanding was as though that didn't come from a dualistic aspect of male and female. It came from a place of two beings coming together through the place of creation. So it's manifested into form through two beings coming in place because of an energetic experience.
That sounds right.
But it would still need to have a carriage.
Not necessarily. I think,
I'm going to say no.
Okay.
What do you mean by carriage?
Well,
Light being. What's a carriage?
So I think that...
does it just appear, poof, there you go, and then all of a sudden you're this fifth density light being?
Or sixth
Or
density.
sixth density light being? Or is there also still the evolution? Because, when they're still talking about a beginning and an end to that incarnation. So to have a beginning and an end, you still need, do you then just appear as a fully fledged sixth density light being?
Is it feminine and masculine anyway, though?
Yeah.
Well, and that's something that. But when we're listening, and if we're going to listen and use the law of one as a point of reference, they're still talking about wisdom and love. Yeah, so there is still some type of...
They're talking about wisdom and love in the sixth density, or they're talking about wisdom and love to us in the third density?
Very good point, actually.
Yeah, because that's the
That
way
is a really good
they
point.
express it, because we can't understand
Throughout
it.
language.
We can't
Yeah.
see, what's
We don't
possible.
understand the physics of mass behind it, because that's...
Okay. So maybe we chuck out all of the other densities other than this one that we're in now, and then try and explain it through that.
Yeah, because every time I experience 6th and 7th densities, it's more of an experience of being rather than words describe.
Very much so.
Well, that's what they talk about. It's more of you really start to use feelings and energies. And energy is a feeling.
So, yeah,
To communicate rather than actually verbalizing or telepathic.
Yeah. Because really, the words we use is so restrictive to an expression of something so immense in that kind of dimensional reality.
So step backwards then, and thinking we were talking about this the other day, that we are starting to see a lot of people in our society going down this path of non-gender identification.
Yes.
So is that really what happens then? Is that something that we're moving towards? Where you don't gender identify with this masculine and female? It's just something is part of that path. So if we're going through this phase and we're turning to zero, so it has to have that separation to experience itself to then come back again to home.
Maybe.
In another dimension, not this one? But
Well,
yes.
like that thing you showed the other day is the singularity point, bang, again we start again.
Yeah.
And then a new iteration happens from the previous experience that we've had through this.
I think there's still the egoic attachment that sits within it, though, because I'm still identifying as a non-gender.
Yes.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So
True.
it's not. So I've still got a polarity.
Mm.
I'm choosing not to identify as any one of these genders, so I'll identify as this.
Mhm.
But then that's probably once again language saying, well, I don't want to become that. I
I can see both in me.
Yeah, and so maybe even that, in essence, is saying that I am divine.
Possibly.
Yeah, maybe we just need to.
We need to find something.
We need a divine thing.
Yeah.
Male, female, divine.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'll just be Devine. Thank you very
that
much.
sounds good.
Yeah.
But I think the beauty of this conversation, if we go back to a moment where is this we're just being masculine and the wisdom and the knowledge, and we're just rather than just being love, the people watching potentially are looking through the eyes of knowledge and wisdom, and us talking in this way allows them to see that love or the feminine energy is something to search for. I guess maybe they haven't seen this yet, they haven't thought about it, haven't talked about it, and now it's learning to accept it. It's the acceptance. It's getting to the point with wisdom and knowledge to learn to accept the feminine energy. So this is a vessel to get to this point. So
we've been in a very masculine world up until now.
Yeah, very. And it's very interesting to see that patriarchal society shifting now. As the statistics show that most places that had female leaders did statistically better through COVID than places that run by men. Or even the perspective we were talking about the other day of, if a female's running a corporation, is she less inclined than to go down the path of destruction and greed?
That was that thing in Peter Cronin's little bit. We were saying, we need to move beyond that, and the reverence needs to be paid more to the feminine, because that's what will get us through.
Negotiators, in governments,
that's been created in the world.
that if they went to the table to negotiate, there'd be less war.
Yeah. And like I said to Maurice the other day, I don't know if it was in a text message or whatever, that the Senate in America was based on the American Indian, someone correct me, but I read this once, it was based on the American Indian political system, and the Senate was always made of females.
Yeah, you told me that once before.
Yeah, and so the decision was coming more from love rather than, back, I guess, a few hundred years ago, men were still in that warring, let's go kill everything, survival instinct.
I've been saying for years to people unknowingly that we need leaders who speak from the heart and they task the knowing or the knowledgeable. That might be a horrible thing to say, but I've often felt the right decisions are going to come from the leaders with love, and I didn't realise it was the feminine energy in essence. Now I do. And we can task the people with logic, knowledge to do beautiful things as well. So I guess that one energy is pure, makes really nice decisions.
Look at Jacinta Ardern. Some of the stuff she's done is incredible.
I think there has to be balance between the masculine and feminine.
I agree.
Oh, for sure. You can swing one to or the other.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if, say, for example, if you put it on the polarity of, let's say, Labour versus Liberal, Labour could be seen as more feminine, a little bit more masculine. But the balance between the two would be very empowering for society. The spending on social welfare, the empowerment of people who are suffering, right through to then the economic kind of programs put in place to make sure Australia stays strong and spends money well over a period of time.
Richard Hawkins, Hawkins talking about this the other day. He says we don't need democracy, we need, what's the word he used? Coalition. Because democracy still sees it as a separation. Coalition means we're working together. That was a really good way of inputting it. You're and you see it in politics now. I'm better than you because you do this, and I'm better than you because it's not. I'm better at doing this. It's I'll put the other person down. So if you can coalition is what he was saying that we need. So you can still have different viewpoints, but working together to get to a common goal.
And in essence, in some of my conversations, whether this is right or wrong, I've often said in terms of our politics at the moment that even the females that come into politics, I feel like they're going into their masculine energy just to compete, and they're not able to, in our system at present, really turn things around in that respect. It's so masculine.
It's not
that too. So we really need that somehow, that love to penetrate and wipe and start again with the love. In that system.
So, because I'm still trying to work out with the masculine and feminine. So I've come back to yin and yang. Right, so if we look at the yin and yang, it comes from the one. So the one is ultimately love. Okay, but as we come into this incarnation where we have polarities, we have duality. When there's duality, there is a masculine and a feminine. So that's what we can then speak to. And we can either have a masculine and feminine that does not see through the eyes of love, or a masculine and feminine that does see through the eyes
Yeah.
of love. And that's where divine masculine and feminine
Yeah.
are. They're still located in the same space,
Mhm.
but it's just it's what is the point of reference that it is showing up and engaging to the world from. Because we've seen toxic masculinity, we also see toxic femininity. It doesn't mean that feminine's good and masculine's bad. It's just that it's either one are not seeing through the eyes of love. They're seeing, in a sense, service to self rather than service to others and humanity and look at what's going on. So maybe if we could then start to look at it from the perspective of we live in a dualistic world, there is a dualistic nature within us. Even if we look at from a Taoist perspective with the meridians, we've got yin and yang organs, yin and yang energies that are flowing through us. When we go and do yoga, we have yang yoga and we have a yin yoga. And we've got yang exercises, we've got yin exercises. So there's this receptive nature, but then you've also got the nature of movement and also the nature of stillness. So how can I move with love? How can I be still with love? Because if I'm still not with love, I just then become passive. If I move not with love, I can become quite aggressive. But I can move with love and be assertive and advocate and move from my values and speak love and compassion. Or I can sit in stillness with love and hold space and listen. See, so it's the way I'm seeing it at the moment, whether I'm using my masculine or my feminine, it's seeing through the eyes of love in my movement or my stillness. And that's how we can then become aware of practically what we can do. Just do the old Ho'oponopono stuff, I love you. I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. But seeing through the eyes of love, speaking through the eyes of love, moving through the eyes of love. And sometimes we don't see it that way, so we can then see it that way.
Contrast.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Drop a mic.
I've got a few minutes.
Good. So in that way, then we can still go, okay, well, we come into this incarnation of duality. It is a masculine and a feminine. There's no doubt about that. There's a receptive left brain and right brain, whether I don't know what's masculine and feminine in that. Mainly, the masculine is the seeking of knowledge to understand wisdom. It's the parts approach that's pulled apart, analytical, science-based. Yeah? Feminine is, I already know this. I'm just trusting it. I'm surrendering. I'm forgiving. If we can then become aware of those elements within us, then we can then see through the eyes of love. But behind that duality, there's that sense of oneness, which is consciousness having a human experience. It is ultimately love.
I like, just referring back to the Ra, with just the simplicity of some of the religions. They sort of suggested that, Jesus was potentially more love-based, and the Eastern philosophies was definitely knowledge-based.
Wisdom.
And within that, when the Christians or the Jesus people, and they lacked some of the wisdom or knowledge, they had trouble. And likewise, when the great monks or whoever got wrapped up in some of the knowledge and lacked a bit of love, they went a little bit crazy and egotistical in a sense. So they lacked maybe a bit of feminine love. So you can see the yin and yang, if it doesn't exist in some sort of harmony or balance, they have the potential to go.
Yeah, because Aaron talks about that in terms of the, Jesus was love, and so that's that shadow work, whereas the Buddhist mind was more the male, masculine way of healing, of like, oh, let's work it out and deal with it, and we'll sit with it and just move through it.
I've seen that a lot now, lately, looking backwards in my Christian background and where I've come from, having more a feminine side as a male, which now I'm like, oh, okay, I get that now. Potentially than people who were raised in an Eastern background. He's really cool.
He's really cool. Is that there's not always this level of dualism stuff. It's like we all see light and dark, but it's not actually darkness, it's the lack of light.
You said that. You said that a few times.
Yeah, it's the lack of light. So if there's love, this is just the lack of love.
Ooh, that's a good question.
So what are we talking about in relation to darkness?
Well, I'm just talking about, we always see everything as a dualistic thing. He was saying, well, not everything is dualism, that's just our mind. In fact, there's love, there's light, there's not something that says not light, there's not darkness, there's the lack of light.
There's not one place in the universe where light does not exist.
Yeah. But so that was interesting to me, because then that is not, we see it as a dualistic thing, but it's not really.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. So are we just looking at all the stuff?
We're not looking.
But
we can't know.
Remember, the mind is a tool of perception.
Yeah.
So we're clouded with this.
Yeah.
But that's the beauty of this experience is that it is clouded. Clouded with duality. Not to say duality is wrong. It's just that veil of duality that we have within. Then we look at the archetypal mind, and coming back to the Ra stuff, the 22, of the major arcana of the tarot will give you a great understanding of what the archetypal mind is about. And in that, we then see the light side, and we see the shadow side, which in essence is the toxic or the divine. I wouldn't even like to call it toxic. We're even giving it that.
It's contrast.
It's the contrast. It's seeing through the eyes of love or not seeing through the eyes of love.
Yeah. But even the divine sees that stuff in the eyes of love.
Well, that's exactly right.
Because they, whatever we want to call the mind, it's the vehicle for it to see the contrast, so it can know love.
And
so without that, it doesn't know love. Yeah. So without masculine, we don't know feminine. Without feminine, we don't know masculine. So there's our answer.
Yeah. So they're there to see each other.
Contrast, yeah.
Yeah, they're there to see each other.
But also, then talking about programming, then is it comes down to that raising. So if you can raise a male, probably quite feminine, but at what point does the inherited programming change that?
Well, what is the inherited programming?
Well, that depends on your lineage and what's been in your past and that sort of stuff. What is in your genetic code?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so we're talking about that physicality stuff.
Sure. Which is also an agreement within the incarnation process.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is interesting because I was listening to Hawkins today, and he was talking about the predetermination around the death. I won't say I'm confused, but I'm interested to hear more about that. That intrigues me, because I would have initially thought that depending on your life choices, how well you eat, and all that sort of stuff, that your choices can either prolong or decrease the chances of survival.
I think what he says, that it means that you are healthier, or you
quality is what I'm using lately.
Yeah, he says your quality of that time is better.
The quality of that time is better.
That's what I'm teaching with all my people.
So
your quality, rather than not being able to and being about, I can do this to that point.
Because he talks about, I think he brings up about kids who, spirits that get aborted. They chose that experience because at a certain time, he says
3 months.
3 months. And he said, if you get aborted, you've chosen that experience.
Yes.
To go, fuck, lack of love. I'm thinking my parents killed me.
Or
whatever it is.
Or you've also been, I'm willing to be a part of that, those parents' journey.
Yeah.
So they can have their...
Or society's whole journey about the process of abortion.
Yeah, because it's even bigger than that.
Or a child that's stillborn.
Yeah.
So they've chosen them.
Yeah. A lady had
this really means, wow!
Talks about that in the journey of the souls as well.
Yeah. So that was a real click in my brain the other day when you said my stuff. I said, wow, so I can either have a less quality journey or a more quality journey, and just go, well, it doesn't matter what I do, it's going to end here, and just how I want to experience that time.
Okay, cool. And it doesn't necessarily mean this is how it's going to happen, it's just that this is your predetermined. Yeah. So you've got a certain amount on the planet to do what you're going to do within your choice. Yeah. And it will take you here, there, and everywhere. But it doesn't matter if you're there or you're there when your time's up.
So I think it's funny, all these body hackers that are trying to live forever. It's kind of, well, they obviously have maybe more of a quality of life, although they're a little bit OCD, something they're obsessed about. One day, the plane's going to land on the house. Sorry, buddy, I don't care how long you lived. See you later.
It's
Or you're going back.
But that's a part of.
Yeah, that's what they
process.
asked to do. I go, I'll do it for this many years and I'm going to go
And
back.
but that's what he talks about too. There's no fear because
When you take it away, you just go, oh, well, it doesn't matter what I do, I'm going to.
Yeah.
But you could then obviously not fall off like a motorbike or bike or get hit by a car or something, which is pain. But obviously that's part of your journey you asked for anyway. So is everything predetermined?
one of the mental.
I don't think everything's predetermined.
no.
The beginning and the end are.
Yes.
Everything in the middle is hopefully.
No, yeah.
I think,
Yes.
but I think that
It's
there's
a journey
certain,
to learn.
there's a flavour to it.
There's definitely way markers, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Agreed.
yeah, and I think the moving, film a new sort of trajectory towards, all those possible probabilities. They're all occurring at the same time, but you sort of slowly move towards those ones. If there's I don't know.
It's like choose your own adventure in a way, isn't it? Just go with whatever you're faced with these many choices at this point, whichever one, and it may end up back at the same place. Which
But I also think as well, with the lessons you go through to learn, you can choose the way you want to learn the lesson. So extreme of like, let's say for example, a extreme accident, or otherwise you could learn the lesson a lot easily and just have like a small accident.
And there might be 50, you get 10, come back again, buddy, you do the other 40.
But he also talks about the people who choose to come back more often than not have the really extreme journey are the ones who progress faster, but not necessarily true. And then some people come back with a really easy life and it doesn't actually enhance them spiritually.
Yeah, well, that's
It's interesting because it
talks about that journey of souls as well. So some people then will may choose to have two incarnations on Earth at the same time. And then, but sometimes it's not always that good because of the fact that they chose to have two to have faster learning, but the karma or the choices they went through in that lifetime, they actually didn't learn very well from them. They actually regressed. So it actually regressed them on a long-term spiritual growth as a soul.
Hawkins was talking about one of his.
Double dipping.
He was experienced with he was in a battle with someone and I forget what the name is, but he stabbed a person and left them to die, which is against some law of you've got to put him out of misery, and that was his karma.
Right.
And then when he came back again, he had to go deal with that in his life. There's such another one where he's fighting in a past life, and they basically simultaneously stab each other in the heart. And all of a sudden they're both out of their bodies, and they go, he was fighting for Jesus and he was fighting for Allah, and they both went, we're fighting for the same bloody thing, the love of our people. And then they just embraced themselves as spirits and just laughed it off. So pretty interesting, some of the stories he tells. He goes, so we're all fighting for the same thing. That was completely off topic.
I know, we did drift off
yes,
but I think that we
covered a fair few
Oh,
topics.
yeah, look, I think, it was a beautiful segue. Absolutely beautiful segue as well, too. Yeah.
Cool. Well,
His stuff was really cool.
His stuff is very cool. So thank you everyone for tuning in this week, and we'll see you next week.
Definitely.
Bye.
Thank you.